Okay, so let's see over here. Uh, we know that one of the carbonos, okay, is called a chatos. And what you're supposed to do is go onto the ramp, as you can see in the picture, and put a drop of the blood on each of the corners. One, two, three, four. So that is what the Torah tells you to do. But what's interesting in the Torah, sometimes the Torah is going to tell you something and it's like only the mitzvah to do. But we learned in our Mishnah that Beis Hillel says that achatas, even if you just give one, put the blood on one corner, keeper, you ready yotze, fine, you got the kapara. You really should do all four, but if you did one, it's okay. With that, and Beis Shammai says no, you have to do a minimum of two. Okay, Beis Shammai says two, and Beis Hillel says you have to do a minimum of one. There's two ramifications for that. One is that um, the one bad thought that you could have is only by the first one, according to Beis Hillel. If you're going to have a piggle thought, it only passes if you have by the first, right away, by the first blood, you have to have a bad thought to passel the carbon. Achutz lizmanoi. According to Beis Shammai, you would have to have that bad thought by the first two bloods that you're putting on the corner, because those are the initial obligation. The rest is just the mitzvah. The other two, according to Beis Shammai, is an extra that the Torah says, okay, do it. But really, according to Beis Shammai, the main gifts are two, and Beis Hillel says the main gifts of achatas is one. Okay, so let's go back into the Gemara over here. Okay, and we are beginning from Daf Lamed Ches. Today's Daf is Daf Lamed Ches, but we're learning from Daf Lamed Zayin and Beis. So here we go. So the Gemara says like this. My time, Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, my time of the Beis Shammai. What is the reason of Beis Shammai? Right? What is the reason of Beis Shammai? So, karnes, because there's three times the pasuk says karnes, and by three different carbon chatas. I can show you in the pictures over here, if you can see it. The Torah writes, I have it in square, karnes, karnes, different types of carbonos chatas. The Torah writes, put it on the corners. If you count the way it sounds like a plural. So each one is two corners. Karnois is the minimum plural. Hare kan shaish. So the Torah gives you a number of the number six. So abal the mitzvah. The Torah is telling you four is the mitzvah. If you want to get the complete mitzvah, do it on all four corners. Ushtaim la'aka, but you have to do a minimum of two. Beis Hillel says, if you look at the way it's spelled, the first two times it's spelled karnois without a vav. You see, and I have it up there. Karnois without a vav, karnois without a vav. The final time it's spelled karnois with a vav. When it's spelled without a vav, it's singular. So karnois. So it's one, two, and karnois with a vav makes it another two. So hare kan arba, the Torah gives you four. So shalosh lemitzvah. So the Torah is telling you that you're supposed to put on four. So three is if you want to if you do three, if you do all four, you get the mitzvah. And if you do three, you get a mitzvah. The last three, you get a mitzvah. But the first one, la'akev, is the main one. Ba'achas la'akev. The main one is the first one. The other three is just to get an extra mitzvah. Says the Gemara, maybe according to Beis Hillel, kula the mitzvah. Maybe the Torah didn't require you on a chatas to sprinkle anything on the mizbeach, to put anything on the mizbeach. And maybe the Torah is telling you that if you want to get an extra mitzvah, put the blood on the corners, but you don't really have to do it. Answers the Gemara, that can't be. Kabara b'chti lo yashkecham. We don't find that you're going to get an atonement for not doing anything. So the Torah requires you to do one sprinkling of blood, and that is a minimum of one. The other three that the Torah says you should do four is if you want to get an extra mitzvah. The if you want, I can tell you that Haini Tama de Beis Hillel, this is the reason of Beis Hillel. Because if you think about it, Ahani Mikra, if you read it, it tells you the number six. V'ahani mesoris, if you look at the way it's spelled, you get, I guess you get a number 4. So ahani mikra latafuye chada, v'ahani mesoris lebetzure chada. So the way it's read, as we saw, Beis Shammai says, it's 6, right? And if you read it without, if you read it with, if you look at the way it's spelled, then the Torah tells you you're supposed to get 4, right? So what you do is you take the number in between 4 and 6 and 5. So basically, the Torah is telling you to do 5 sprinklings. Now, obviously, there's no 5 sprinklings, so because there's only 4 corners on the mizbeach. So the Torah is telling you one is obligatory, and that's different than the rest. And the rest of the other 4, or the other 3 is you get an extra mitzvah, and that's the svara of Beis Hillel. So the Gemara asks a couple of questions. Elamiyata, let's examine other places where the Torah, like say, misspelled something, and that's how you know. Let's say on the Tefillin Shel Rosh, you know that there are 4 boxes, 4 boxes on the Tefillin Shel Rosh. Let's look at the way it's spelled. 3 times the Torah tells you, toitafos, and toitafos. The first 2 times it's without a vav. So that's one box, and the last time it's with a vav, it's 2 boxes. So harei kan arba, so therefore you have 4. But if it's read, if you read it and you don't look at the way it's spelled, it sounds like the Torah requires you 6 boxes. So let us say that the Torah doesn't require 6, and the Torah doesn't require you 4. Chamisha bati boilam. Maybe the Torah requires you some number in between 4 and 6, which you should put on 5 little boxes on top of your head for the tefillin. Answers the Gemara, Sovala Rabbi Kiva, the Amar toit bekaspi shtayim, pat be'afriki shtayim. Really, the reason why it's the number 4, because the word toitafos means 4. How does the word toitafos means 4? In the Caspian language, tat means 2, is the number 2. In the African language, pas means 2. So therefore, when you combine 2 and 2, the Torah toitafos is basically two different ways to say the number 2. And therefore, you get the number 4. So that settles it by the tefillin. Elamiyata, let's ask you another question. Torah tells you basukais, basukais, basukais. Okay, notice how the first 2 times it's without a vav, and the last time it's with a vav. So if you just read it and don't look at the way it's spelled, it's plural. So the Torah is telling you 2, 2, 2, 6. But if you look at carefully the way it's spelled, so the first basukas tells you 1 wall, the second basukas tells you 2 walls. And then the third time, it tells you you need another 2 walls. So therefore, maybe the Torah requires you to have some number in between 4 and 6, which is number 5. Maybe you need to have 5 walls to your sukkah. Maybe I have to have 5 walls. Maybe I'm supposed to make my sukkah into a pentagon. How do I know that you need 3 walls? That's an interesting thing. Now we go to Lamed Ches. Answers the Gemara Hossam over there by Sukkos, Chad Kra Kula Legufei. One pasuk tells you that you have to make a sukkah, so that's needed. B'chad l'sach vacha, and one pasuk tells you that you need that the schach, that you have to make it with schach. So you knock away 2 of them. So you have the number 5. So you knock away 2. So what's left is 3 walls, three of them. So and therefore you would need 3 walls. But as we know, you don't need 3 complete walls. You need 2 walls and 1 tefach, because that is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Asa halacha l'Moshe Sinai. The halacha l'Moshe Sinai tells you ugrase l'shlishis. It made the 3rd wall smaller. Vaikmisa a tefach, and that only has to be a tefach, whereas other walls have to be larger than a tefach, right? The 3rd wall can be just a little bit of a tefach, so you can have 2 walls and a tefach, but you don't need 5 walls. Okay, so although the Torah says 5 times the word sukkah, so to speak, one is you need it just to tell you what you're supposed to do. One is for the schach, and the 3 extra times it tells sukkah is for the walls. So you need just 3 walls. Elameata, says the Gemara asks again. The Torah tells you the Tama Shvu'ayim, and the Torah tells you that a woman who gives birth to a baby girl is Tame for 2 weeks. But that's if you look carefully how it's spelled. But it could also be read, if you don't look how it's spelled, it could sound like Shivim. The Torah is telling you to take 70 days. She should be tummy for 70 days. So really, maybe you should take the number in between, 70 and 14, which is 56. Divide that in half, which is 28, and add that to the number 14, and that's what you should say. Maybe the Torah is telling you, Ahani Krav, Ahani Mesiris. You read it, you take both the way it's read and the way it's spelled, and therefore a woman who gives birth to a baby girl should be Abar Nutrain Boilamesiv, should be Tameh for 42 days. Answers the Gemara, Shana Asim over there, it's different. Ksiv Kini Dasa. She should be Tameh like a Nida. Well, we know a Nida is only Tameh for 7 days. So what's the next number that you can possibly say that this woman is like a Nida? Is 14, because 14 is like a double Nida. So that's maybe the Torah clearly says that don't ignore the way it sounds like, and the Torah just says, just look the way I spelled it. I spelled it as Shvu'ayim, which is Shavua means week, and Yim is plural of weeks, 2 weeks. So bottom line is, let's get the bottom line. The bottom line is, how do we know that according to Beis Hillel, that only one, if you sprinkle just one out of the 4 corners, you're Yaitse? Because the Torah tells you, karnois. Basically, the Torah tells you do 5 sprinklings, if you read it carefully, on the 5 corners. Well, there's only 4 corners. So what the Torah is telling you, that one of that yes, I want you to do 4, but one of those 4 is very different, and that is the main one. That is if you don't do that, you're not Yaitza. The rest of them, the other 3, is just for a mitzvah. If you want to get an extra mitzvah, you do on all 4. But really, the main one is only 1. Betana Maisa Lamahach, and a Tana of a Brisa brought the reasoning of the Hillel from over here. You see, in the Chumash, it says, as you can see on the screen, by each of the carbon time, it says carbon katas, it says v'chipar olav. V'chipar olav, right over here where I have it in yellow. V'chipar olav. You should get a kapara, which implies that the Torah tells you put it on the corners. Now, why is the Torah saying get a kapara? So the Torah is telling you you don't have to do everything that I said. You get a kapara even if you didn't follow the directions. So what the Torah is going to basically tell you, that even if you're going to be missing, you didn't do on all 4 corners, you just did on 1 corner, you still got your kapara. That's what the Torah is telling you. And the Tana Maisa L'Mahacha, v'chipa. Because the Tana had a problem. He said, you don't even need to have a pasuk to teach me. I could learn it out, mipnei hadin. I could learn it out from a mamatzinu. Shiyachov alaydinu. I could make it a comparison. Nemra dam lamata. The Torah tells you place the bloods by a carbon oila on the bottom of the mizbeach. The nemru dam lamala. And then the Torah tells you that you should, when it comes to a carbon chatas, put the blood on the 4 corners of the mizbeach. Ma matan dam hamura lamata. Just like when the Torah tells you do a carbon oila. Even if you just did 1 sprinkling on the bottom of the mizbeach, keeper, you fulfilled your obligation of that carbon oil, and you got your atonement. Avdamin hamuram lamala. So also when the Torah tells you to bring your carbon chatas and put it on top of the mizbeach, keeper, when you give it, you do 1 gift, you also get a kapara. Because we already established from a pasuk, v'dam zvochecha yishafech, that pasuk told me clearly that by a carbon oila, just 1 yishafech, 1 sprinkling is good enough. So also, if the Torah tells you by an oila 1 sprinkling is good enough, so the Torah is implying that even by a carbon chatas 1 sprinkling is good enough. But maybe not so fast. Klach l'derach zu. Let's go to the other direction. Nemer dama b'fnim, v'nemer dama b'chutz. Sometimes the Torah tells you to bring the carbon chatas on the outside mizbeach. And sometimes the Torah tells you bring the carbon chatas on the inside the mizbeach. If you remember, here we can just if you remember that on Yom Kippur, as you can see in the picture, the Kohen Gadol brought the blood of the carbon chatas on the outside of the mizbeach. He had to touch every corner of that small mizbeach that was in the sanctuary, right? That was the small mizbeach that was in the sanctuary. That's over here, right? So he had to go in there and bring his carbon chatas there. There, we know from a pasuk that you have to do all four. So you could say like this, just like the carbon chatas panimi had to be if you're missing one, you were not yotzei. So I would say the opposite, that if you missed one blood from the carbon chatas that's supposed to be brought on the outside mizbeach, you didn't accomplish anything. So you can compare a carbon chatas to a carbon chatas pnimi, or you can compare a carbon chatas chitzoni to a carbon oila. So the Gemara says, Nir l'mi daima. Let's compare it to a carbon oila. Dan mechutz mechutz, vein dan mechutz mefnim. You can take one carbon of chatas that's supposed to be brought on the outside mizbeach and compare it to an oila that's supposed to be brought on the outside mizbeach, but don't bring the chatas that's supposed to be brought on the outside mizbeach and learn a halacha from a chatas that was supposed to be brought on the inside of mizbeach. But the Gemara says that klach l'derzu. You could say the opposite. Don and chatas v'abor kronis, v'chatas v'abor kronis. Both of them have to be put on four corners. The chatas pnimi was put on the four corners of the inside mizbeach. The chatas chitzon was put on the four corners of the outside mizbeach. So therefore, they're similar to each other. V'al yachia chutz ein chatas v'abor kronis. Don't learn a chatas chitzoni from a carbon oila, which was not supposed to be put on any corners. It was supposed to be put on the bottom of the mizbeach. So the bottom line is, I have no source that a carbon chatas, just one sprinkling on one corner, you're yaitza. So the Gemara says, Talmud Bavli, I have a pasuk. Pasuk says, v'chiper, v'chiper, v'chiper. Why does the Torah repeat? The chiper means you got the kapara even if you missed out. The first time the Torah tells you, chiper tells you, even if you only put 3 sprinklings, you were yaitz, you got your kapara. The second keeper tells you, even if you just did 2. And finally, the keeper just knocks off and says, even if even if you just did 1 sprinkling on the mizbeach, you were yaitza. Says the Gemara, I need the Torah you see, in the Torah it tells you, v'chiper. I needed to tell you that you're getting a kapara. The word keeper means kapara. No. So I need these words. So the Gemara says there's another word that the Torah uses, you're getting a kapara. V'nislach loy, right? So that you don't need the keeper. So answers the Gemara, right. Amarabba bar adabar mori asbirli amakra v'chiper v'nislach zuhi kapara zuhi slicha. The Torah told you you're getting a forgiveness. So why did the Torah say the word v'chiper? For the word v'chiper is extra to teach you that even if you didn't follow the fuller directions, Torah tells you do 4 on the 4 touchings of the 4 corners, and the Torah says v'chiper, that only even if you missed 3 of them and you just did 1 corner, you were yaitza. It says the Gemara, ema v'chiper afal pish lo nosen el sholish lamata v'achas lamata. V'chiper afal pish lo nosen el shtein lamata. V'chiper afal pish lo nosen mala el lamata. Since the Torah tells you v'chiper, what the Gemara is trying to say right now is it's very hard to say that the Torah is telling you, oh, you don't have to do it. I'd rather say that the Torah is telling you, you do have to do it, but even if you didn't follow the directions, you were yaitza. And could be that the Torah wrote v'kiper to tell you that even if you didn't put the 4 sprinklings on the top of the mizbeach, maybe the Torah is telling you that even if you put it all on the bottom of the mizbeach, you did 4, touchings of the bottom of the mizbeach with the carbon chatas, you were yaitza. Maybe that's what the Torah is telling you, because once you have most of them, on top, on the bottom. All four of them should be on the bottom, but not to say that you don't have to do the other three. Rav Bar Yitzchak, im came betalto Torah's arba karnanis. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, then why, if the Torah says that you could put it on the bottom of his bath, then why would the Torah say you have to put it on the corner if the Torah was okay with you putting it on the bottom of his bath? So v'i rachmana ama libatlan. So the Gemara asks back, but maybe that's what the Torah is telling you. Lichatchila, I want you to go to the top of the mizbeach and put it on all four corners. B'di'eved, if you went to the bottom of the mizbeach, it's okay, but you need to do all four. Answers the Gemara, Amarava Eza Davar Sar Shlois have Ame Eli Koronis. Rava reverts back and he says, listen, if that was what the Torah wanted you to do, then the Torah should have written the 4 times the word v'chiper to tell you that, look, you need that b'di'eved, if you put all 4 on the bottom, you get a kapara. But the Torah only wrote kippur 3 times. So maybe that it makes more sense to tell you that the Torah is telling you the keeper means you deduct 1. If you deduct 1 from 4, you got 3, you're okay. Second, the keeper says if you deduct 2, you're also okay. And the third, the keeper says even if you missed not doing 3 of them and you just did 1 of them, you're okay. And that makes the most sense. Says the Gemara, Ema, the keeper. So the Gemara still has a question. Let us say the keeper afa pishli noson ella achas lamala v'shalosh lamata. Maybe the Torah is telling you, the chiper, that 1 of them is on top of the mizbeach, and if you put the 3 of them on the bottom, that's what you need to do. But not that you should get rid of it totally. Again, the Gemara is, trying to say that, look, I can't believe that the Torah tells you that if you didn't put it on a mizbeach, you get a kapara. Maybe the Torah is telling you that if you didn't follow the directions, you only put 1 on one corner and the 3 on the bottom, you will also yaitza. Answers the Gemara, that cannot be, because we never find that the Torah tells you to put the blood in 2 different places, 1 on top and then on the bottom. It's either up or on the bottom or nothing at all. But the Torah is not giving you ideas. You can mix it up. Says the Gemara of Eloi, isn't that true? What now we learned in the Mishnah, he's a memenu achas l'mala v'shev l'mata. When the Kohen Gadol sprinkles the blood on Yom Kippur towards the paroiches, the curtain, it says you do 1 on top and 7 on the bottom. Answers the Gemara kamatzlev. He didn't do that way. My kamatzlev, masrim ravinya kimenagdono. He did it like when the Kohen sprinkled the blood before the paroiches and even in front of the Aron Kodesh, he actually sprinkled them in a row, as you can see in the picture. He sprinkled them. But why do you say achas, shtayim, achas? Because the first sprinkling was done like in an underhand motion. And then the other 7 sprinklings were done in a overhand motion. That the way a person would get malchus. So that's the difference. But he did, it was all in one location, all in one place. Says the Gemara, how do you know that? When he sprinkled on the Mizbeach, he's al Torah al Mizbeach Shebapon. The Torah says that the Kohen Gadol sprinkles the blood on the Mizbeach, Hapnimi, 7 times. We go to Amid Beis. Maybe the Torah says, my love, Apalga Mizbeach. You do 1/2 the Mizbeach. Kida Amr Inshe Tahar Tiara Diyomer, because the Torah says, he's a al tahare shel mizbeach. Tahare means on the midpoint of the mizbeach, and he just throws it, and some land on top and some land on the bottom. Maybe that's the way the Kohen sprinkled the blood on the mizbeach hapnimi on Yom Kippur. Amar Rava Bashela Loi Igluya Diksiv Ke'etzem Mashmaim LaTorah. The Torah says that when you sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach hapnimi, you see the way the picture has it. He's sprinkling it on top of the mizbeach. He just toyar means you clear off the top of the mizbeach from ashes and you make it clear, and then you just sprinkle it over here. But not that you're sprinkling part of the blood on top of the mizbeach and part of the blood on the bottom of the mizbeach. Says the Gemara, "V'ikar shirayim." But isn't the Kohen Gadol by every carbon chatas you put the bloods on top of his bath, and then you put the extra blood that you have in your vessel, you put it on the bottom of the mizbeach. Answers Gemara, Shirayim lemi'atva. You don't have to spill anything on the bottom of the Mizbeach, but the Evid, it's okay. Says the Gemara of Ika Shraim Hapnimi, but the carbon Chatas Hapnimi, you have to sprinkle the blood, like as you can see in the picture, when he came out of the sanctuary and then poured the blood on the bottom of the Mizbeach. So basically, he poured the rest of the blood on the bottom of the Mizbeach HaChitzain, and the initial bloods he put on top of the Mizbeach. So he didn't mix it up, part on top and part on the bottom. And says the Gemara, even though you have to do that, but in one place, you never put half on top, half on the bottom. It's either the Torah is going to require you to put all on top, all on the bottom, but not half and half. So therefore, when the Torah says you can get away with doing one, the Torah meant to say you could do one sprinkling, you don't have to do the other three. Let's do two more minutes, then we'll stop. Then we learned, very simple. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Rav Lezer ben Yaakov oimer beishamay oimem shtei matan shebechatas v'acha shebechol azvochem matiros umafaglos. Beisilo oimer acha shebechatas v'acha shebechol zo materis umafagelis. We had this in the Mishnah. Beis Shammai says you need 2 sprinklings, and Beis Hillel says you need 1. But you think about it, Beis Hillel is the more stricter, because if you're going to make a carbon puzzle, just a bad thought by the first one, according to Beis Hillel, disqualifies the carbon. But according to Beis Shammai, since you need to have both sprinklings, both corners, and you need to have a minimum of 2, then you would have to have a bad thought by two gifts, 2 sprinklings. So it comes out that Beis Shammai is the lenient one and Beis Hillel is the stricter one. So therefore, when we have a Masechta called Idias, where we list off where Beis Shammai goes more lenient than Beis Hillel, we should mention this Mishnah. Maskif lo Rav Shayim came lisnei gabi kule Beis Shammai v'chomrei Beis Hillel. We should put this our Mishnah by the Mishnayos and Idias, which list off the leniencies of Beis Shammai and the strictness of Beis Hillel. Because Beis Hillel says, even if you have a bad thought by just one of the sprinklings, the first one, you right away disqualified the carbon, and whereas Beis Shammai says you need to have the same bad thought by the first 2. And says the Gemara, Amalei Rava ki itchel latera itchel, the Havalei Beis Shammai the Chumra. If you look at it from the reverse, they asked the question in Shul and the yeshiva, how many sprinklings do you have to do on a chatas? And Beis Shammai said 2, and Beis Hillel said 1. And so the question was, when do you get the kapara? Beis Shammai says only after 2, and Beis Hillel says only after 1. In that case, if you look at it from that angle, Beis Hillel is the more lenient one, whereas Beis Shammai is the more chumradik one. Finally, the Gemara concludes, and we'll stop over here. Omar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, we just got through saying by a carbon chatas, all you have to do is 1 sprinkling. What about the other 3? The other 3, it's a mitzvah to do it. You can't just throw it out. Sholosh matonesh shebechatas eine bois balayla. You can't sprinkle it at night. You can't put it away and say, I'm going to do the rest at night, because it'll be pasalbalina. You have to do it during the day. Uboyis la'achamisa. And interestingly enough, let's say the guy died right after the first sprinkling. Well, we know a chatas that the owner died, you don't go anything further. Here, if the owner died right after the first sprinkling, you could continue the other 3 sprinklings. And the last 3 sprinklings, even though it's a mitzvah, the Torah says, put it on the Mizbeach, but you have no right to now bring it outside to another Mizbeach outside the Beis Hamikdash. And if you do that, you get the big avera of mala b'chutz. So that is, so again, it's a mitzvah to bring the other 3, but the real main one is the first sprinkling, and that's the opinion of Beis Hillel. Okay, we'll stop over here.